All right, let's fire this thing up. Now this is a perfect example of rack storage for a boat, and this is going to be fantastic. Well, good deal you made it. Hi, I'm John Graviscus. It's great to have you back around the boat with us again. And what I want to talk about is all the different boats that you're looking at on all the different racks here at my local hometown marina. I'm in and out of this marina almost every day, and I know firsthand that a lot of these engines don't get started for months on end. And the downside to that is whenever you don't run the boat, okay, parts can actually freeze in different shapes. And what I'm talking about here are parts like this. This is a rubber impeller that actually goes inside a water pump, part of an outboard engine cooling system. And notice how the blades are kind of stuck in a Gornak position, okay? Well, this is supposed to be flexible, and whenever it's stuck in the housing and it doesn't move, it holds that shape, you know? And the downside to that is when you get it into the water and you fire up the engine, is you can actually start losing some of the blades, okay? It becomes brittle and they start snapping off. Well, if you don't get water pressure and you don't get water through the engine, it's not going to cool, and inevitably you could get into an expensive repair bill. Now today here at ShipShape TV, what we're going to do is we're going to take you through the process of changing out a water pump. And we're going to cover all the different brands, whether you have a Mercury or a Yamaha or an Evinrude. It's going to be very, very interesting. But we're also going to kind of get into the lower gear case, and we want to talk about that as well. But guess what? Before we can get into any of this stuff, shoot, you know the drill by now. You see, we need to work out a little trade-off. We've got to get all of you to spend the next 30 minutes with us as we're working right here along the beautiful water's edge. And then in exchange, with again the help of a few of my very knowledgeable friends in the marine industry, we're all going to be pooling together in order to do our very best to let you in on a few more ways to make your boat shipshape.
ShipShape TV, America's favorite boat improvement show.
The first thing that I would like to learn a little bit more about is what my options would be in the way of replacement parts for these water pumps that I want to replace on two counter-rotating engines. And that leads us to our first expert guest. Who we have the privilege of having on today first is a gentleman by the name of Larry Levere, and Larry is with a company called Sierra International. He's over in our boat shop setting up, so let's head over there in order to learn more.
John, what we have on this side of the table is a Sierra water pump kit that fits your particular application for the project boat you're working on. And the first thing you might notice is we have about 25 separate components that make up this kit.
Okay, take a look at the table here, okay? We have this torque wrench that's kind of separating a Sierra water pump kit from a Bombardier original equipment water pump kit. And Larry, what I'm noticing first is that with the guy that actually made the engines that are on the project boat, with their replacement parts, there's less parts on this side of the table than there are with your water pump kit. What's going on here?
This particular water pump kit manufactured by Bombardier fits probably 7, 8, maybe 9 different model numbers, a little bit narrower in its scope. We put a few more components in our kit and broaden its coverage. We probably cover 14, 15, maybe 16 different model numbers and maybe a few more model year coverage, just to kind of expand the coverage of that kit.
Let's talk about some choices that you might have as a consumer. Right here on the table, maybe you have a Mercury, we have Quicksilver, original equipment parts. If you have Bombardier, like we do, they make original equipment parts. Yamaha. But there's also companies, Larry, that make specifically engine parts that weren't the original manufacturers of the engines, okay? But as I've been doing my research, I've noticed across the board, whenever I look at like a Sierra aftermarket part, almost all the time, it's less money, dramatically less money than original equipment parts. And I want to find out why, okay? Is it materials? Are you guys using cheaper materials? Is it you're not at the same specifications? Is it a warranty issue? How in the world are you offering parts for less money?
To address the pricing issue, first of all, Bombardier, this is a rather large profit center for them, as the parts are for us. We tend to go to market at a little lower price, a little less margin that we make on the items than I'm sure that Bombardier does. As far as the configuration of the parts, what the parts are physically made out of, our impeller is a neoprene impeller,
okay.
Same material that Bombardier is using. One of the advantages of this particular impeller, like you were talking about earlier in the show at the marina, I think you referenced the term Gornak.
Hold on, let me show everybody another example. Here is a different impeller, and it's actually in the stainless steel cup, all right? And it's stuck in this position. Those blades don't flex out anymore. And it's lost its memory, basically, is what's happened. Does neoprene address that?
It handles that better. It's not impervious to losing its flexibility, but it handles it much better than a standard rubber impeller. So when the boat's in storage, when you bring the boat down, it's more likely to flex and not lose its elasticity.
Okay, so it's the same material between original equipment parts and that part with the impeller.
Yes.
All right, so if it's not the materials, they're the same specifications, right?
Exact same dimensional referencing. We are a direct replacement parts company.
Okay, it's got to be warranty. Talk to me about warranty. If you go with a company like Sierra, am I not going to get the warranty that I get with original equipment parts?
You're actually going to get an expanded warranty. We feel our warranty is the best in the industry. As a consumer, these particular products are backed by customer satisfaction guarantee. If this particular product would fail or found to be defective and cause you damage to your motor, I mean, this particular impeller, if it's not pumping water, can actually do severe damage to the power head.
Right.
We will reimburse you for the cost of the repairs for your motor.
Okay.
And we do that for the lifetime that you have the vessel.
You have a choice out there. A lot of people are going to feel more comfortable going with the person, their parts that actually made the engine. Absolutely a choice. But there are alternatives, especially if you're price conscious.
Yes,
okay?
sir.
Let's talk about the engines that we have on the Pursuit. Okay? This is a pair of 2002. These are the Evinrudes, manufactured by Bombardier. They're Ficht motors, and they're counter-rotating motors. And the first thing that we need to do is drop the lower unit. I'll grab some tools in order to do that. Now, what I want to do is remove the propeller prior to dropping the lower unit. It's also a good idea to turn off your battery. You don't want any power connected to your outboard when you're working around it, okay? Makes me a little bit nervous. But Larry, what I need you to do is go ahead and put the boat in forward, okay? We have a 60-degree motor here, and because of the year of the motor and because of kind of how things work with shift linkage and all that, we have to put this particular motor in forward prior to dropping the lower unit. Now that can vary from year to year. That can vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. So what I would recommend you doing prior to tearing into anything is make sure that you have a shop manual, or you can get like a really cool DVD from your favorite marine center. It's called Sea-Lock. And basically it has all the different manufacturers, all the different horsepower, little tips. I mean, it's really, really great. But what's holding this lower unit onto the engine are 6 bolts. We have 2 here on this side. We have 2 on the opposite side. We have 1 right here. And our 6th bolt is hidden underneath this torque tab. So we're going to have to remove that. But prior to removing a torque tab, especially if you have a single engine, you want to take some type of a marker and put a hash mark right down the middle of the torque tab, as well as right there on that cavitation plate. And this way you know the exact spot to put it back at. Okay? This counters the natural torque of the engine. Okay? It's for steering. It's very, very important. So once we remove the torque tab, we can come over here and remove this cover. We're going to have to disconnect our shift rod. We'll unbolt it and we'll drop the lower unit. Well, we're excited that you're back with us here in the boat shop. And we again have the privilege of having Larry Levere on the program from Sierra International. And what I'm doing right here is with a Scotch-Brite pad, I'm just cleaning up any rust that's on the drive shaft as well as any debris. And that's real key because what we have to do is we have to remove the old water pump, okay? And do you see this tube right here? Well, this is a water support tube. We're going to have to remove this prior to unbolting the water pump housing. It's held in with 4 bolts. We're going to have to back those off. And we'll slide the water pump housing over the drive shaft. We'll get it out of the way. That's going to expose the cup as well as the impeller. And these can sometimes freeze or really lock onto your drive shaft. You might need to use a screwdriver in order to work the impeller off of the drive shaft, but just kind of shimmy it up. You'll eventually get it out of the way. Now that's going to expose your wear plate. So we've got to remove the wear plate. There's a gasket underneath that. We could either use a gasket scraper or a straight slotted screwdriver. Very carefully kind of scrape that thing off. We clean everything up and we're ready to put the new water pump kit on, Larry. And why don't you take us through the process of what we've got to do?
The first thing we want to do is we want to take the housing. And if we look at the housing, you're going to notice a recessed area for an O-ring. And this seals the cup to the housing. We want to dab a little bit of Perfect Seal in there and set it in there to hold it in place. But we want to make sure that we get no Perfect Seal or any kind of sealant in what they call the primer hole. It's a little groove that's cut into the housing that supplies the pump with water prior to startup.
And it's only true with these Bombardiers. It's not every motor out there. If you've got a Yamaha or a Mercury, you might not have that situation at all.
After we get the O-ring set in there and glued in place, we want to take the cup and make sure that we get the cup aligned properly and press that into the housing. And the next thing we want to do is with the impeller, and this is where it gets just a little confusing at times. The drive shaft rotates in a clockwise rotation.
Okay, even though we have counter-rotating engines, and you might have twin engines where one propeller is turning to the right, the other propeller is turning to the left. Even if you have that, your drive shaft right here will always turn clockwise, which means which way do we turn an impeller into the water pump housing?
When we are turning the impeller into the housing, we're going to be looking at it upside down.
Okay.
We want to take that impeller, kind of center it, and then we want to turn it in. Now that impeller is going to want to fight you to get in there.
Okay.
We'll take a pair of pliers, just kind of grab it, and just turn it counterclockwise until it is fully seated.
Let's talk about the new replacement gasket. We'll slide it over our drive shaft, set it in place. We'll put our new wear plate on, and we have to somehow let this impeller spin, yet we need it to kind of be one with the drive shaft. How are we going to lock it into place?
The kit comes with a little key, and we have to place this key on the flat milled area on the drive shaft. Once the old impeller is out of the way, you'll see that flat spot.
A little dab of grease will kind of hold it into place for you.
It's a great little trick of the trade. That will slide in place as the housing comes down and locks the impeller to the shaft.
Okay, and all we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bolt it up. We'll have to put our new water support tube back in place, and we're just about ready to slide them back into the midsection of the engines. But what we need to do right now is we need to take our last time out of the day, but keep it right here because when we come back, we're going to cover the lower gear case oil change that we're going to have to do, and we're going to be back out on the water in the pursuit. It's going to be running. It'll be fabulous, and we'll cover it right after this.
Project today is pretty much complete, which means we're now back on the water with John.
Well, we've gone ahead and we have successfully replaced 2 water pumps on our twin engines. Hey, we're back now on the water in our pursuit fishing boat, and we've been running this vessel for about 3/4 of an hour out here on the Okeechobee waterway. And basically, remember I told you that a lot of problems will happen within the first 15 minutes of getting your boat back on the water after it's been in long-term storage, like winter storage, for instance. So not only do you want to change out your water pumps before you get into the water, you also want to change out your gear case oil. Now remember, you fill it from the bottom screw plug, okay? You wait until it gets up to the top plug, go ahead and put that in, then put in your bottom plug. You also want to check out your prop shaft seals. You could pick up accidentally some monofilament fishing line. It could cut into that seal, and if water gets into your gear case, you could get into an expensive repair, okay? So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Hey, we got a couple of people that we need to thank who helped make today's show possible. First off, we need to thank Larry Levere as well as the rest of the staff at Sierra International. West Marine was very instrumental. Thank you guys. GMC was very instrumental. Pursuit Fishing Boats chipped in. My crew, including Bert Dell, man, did an awesome job. Thanks, Bert. But you know what? The most important one that we need to thank here, that's right, it's been you. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with us right here on the beautiful water's edge for the last half hour. But we've got to go. But how about this? How about until we see each other again, can you do yourself a favor? Can you get out there and make your boat ship shape? Of course you can. I'm John Graviscus. This is Bert Dell. We'll see you next time. Bert, let's pick up speed and let's get the heck out of here, man.